Spring is in the air and the local Campsie hills are emerging from their snowy hibernation. Normally, when the weather's this nice, I go riding. But with the first comp of the season a few days away, I sent a cute thief out to find me a new comp bike. He says that he's found something unlike anything he's seen before. I'm intrigued. Let's see what this cute cat dragged in. It's another Onza, and it wasn't kidding. The more you look at this thing, the weirder it gets. Onza weren't scared of experimenting, and this is a one-off prototype. Unlike the steel Raptor Proto I built recently, this seems to be a little more modern and aimed at comp-style riding, hence the lack of any seating. But let's talk about the pachyderm in the room. This thing has 2 bottom brackets. I've never seen anything like this before. CT sure has a knack for finding interesting frames. The weirdness doesn't stop there though. Look how many brake mounts it has. Now some of you may have worked out what's going on here, but if you're scratching your head, I don't really blame you. This frame's goal was to be able to run 2 wheel sizes, 26-inch and 20-inch. The lower BB position is meant for 26-inch and the higher for 20. I believe this frame was made at the time Craig Lee Scott was riding for Onza, so the 20-inch geometry is close to how his previous Zoo 20-inch bike's geo was, i.e. long wheelbase and chainstays. I honestly have no idea what this will ride like. Is the different BB position enough to remove some serious geometry compromises? Is it just the worst of both worlds? Or was this an idea that warranted more development? I guess I'll find out soon. As for the rest of the frame, it uses the same Onza head tube as a few of the other models. From past experience, it is possible to fit a tapered fork in these, but they do require a little bit of Dremel work on the inside to clear the steerer. I went ahead and did that already, as I got a sneak peek at what fork I'll be using. Moving down the frame, at first I thought it had a huge dent in the top tube. But actually, it's been crimped at both sides. I assume this is to make a better weld contact between it and the down tube. The crimp may have been purposeful, but this isn't. Weirdly, this chip looks like there's been some seriously thick paint used, or maybe some filler. Bit of a shame it's been damaged though. A closer look at the BB area and there's a mount behind the shells. Plus this one on the down tube. These are fitments for a bash plate. It's traditional for 26-inch trials bikes to use a bash ring, but 20-inch bikes used a plate, similar to moto trials. I don't really know why 26-inch never really took this up. Now this is an older style though, and most modern 20-inch bikes have very minimal designs now. And speaking of minimal things, the brake mounts are simple with just a small gusset to help stiffen things up. Modern bikes have much more substantial strengthening to help get the most power from the brakes. The collar's dropouts are quite neat with plenty of length to please everyone. There's also a disc mount with lots of adjustability, though this style never gives me as much confidence as a more chunky design would. It's certainly a quirky frame, but it does pass the balance test. Always a good sign. I do plan on entering a comp on this, so I wonder how much it weighs. Under 2 kilos isn't too bad. Considering the last Onza I built was over 3, we're already off to a decent start. Enough about the frame, let's see what parts we have and see if this bike is a hop or a flop. Going to stick to tradition this time and fit the headset first. I mentioned this frame being compatible with tapered forks, but that's only by using one of these Hope H cups. This turns internal lower cups into external. It doesn't work with every frame though, as some curvy head tubes will foul a tapered steerer, and just like football players, tapered steerers are complete wusses. Okay, literally the first part fitted and we have our first issue. The head tube has really shallow cups. I actually had this issue with the T-Rex I modified. Seems to just be an Onza thing. but the headsets they come with were steel and much shallower than usual. I actually modified the cups on that bike, but I don't want to alter this more expensive Hope one, so I'll just leave it as is. In theory, the cups are still in the frame as much as the originals and are bottomed out, so there shouldn't be any movement. I guess I'll find out when I ride it, won't I? Fork time, and one that's been in a few videos now. A Kruker's carbon model. Kruker's actually sent me these years ago. They're sure getting their money's worth of how many videos I've put them in. But despite their age and some battle scars, they've held up well. Very impressive considering how light they are. They do a few versions, but these are the 26-inch disc 9mm dropout model. They do a 20-inch size plus rim brake and 12mm through-axle one too. And as you might have guessed, they come with a tapered steerer, which is Kevlar reinforced. I wouldn't exactly call them bulletproof, but extra reinforcement is welcomed after the incident. Cool, nearly done. But a stem will help. This is a Comas Trials model and has good angles for the dangles. 130mm with 20-degree rise, to be precise. It's forged rather than welded, so should be strong, yet it weighs less than a bowling ball, which is ideal for a stem. A spacer, or two, goes on first. Some people like matching ones, me included, but I gotta run what the cat brung. The steer is a little tight, but maybe that's why they're so popular. Finally, a top cap tops things off caply. Looking good, and not far from being finished now. These bars got a blast of disc brake cleaners to freshen them up. Maybe I should have made sure it was all evaporated before I took such a deep breath. Also, remind me to remind CT that Inspired are now a rival brand.
There are rivals.
But hey, I know what I like, and I like what I know, and a sponsor change doesn't stop me from liking these bars. I'll just nip the bar up for now and sort its dangle later. I suppose it needs at least one wheel, so let's go with the back one. The hub is the second prototype part, this time from Tratec. Now, I actually skipped over one key detail of the frame. It takes a 116mm rear hub. Well, actually it's 110mm, but with room for two 3mm Snell cam tensioners. This is, or at least was, the hub standard for 20-inch trials bikes. This was Tratec's prototype 20-inch disc hub and gives me an extra option in case a rim brake doesn't work for some reason. The rim is an older Inspired drilled model. At around 36mm wide, it's a little narrower than a usual comp rim, but it should be stiffer. But most importantly, the white rim and black spokes are a perfect match for the frame. So far, we've had English, French and Spanish parts. Now we go to the Germans for the tyre, and specifically a Schwalbe Magic Mary. This is their downhill soft compound tyre and should be stable even with the narrower rim. The keen-eyed among you will have noticed a modified tread. Just like a famous religion, I do like to trim the knobs down a little. This saves weight and actually aids grip by reducing tyre squirm. Plus, by reducing the height of every second shoulder knob, I make space for the tyre to grip to corners of objects, much like a coarse saw grips the wood better than a fine one. "10 points for ease of fitting." How about we go ahead and give it 15 more points in the form of a rear sprocket. First, I add a little spacer to keep it away from the spokes, and then I thread on the 15-point sprocket. I love how easy these are to fit, but taking them off is another matter altogether. Let's just say it's not a trailside fix, unless you want to take a vice out riding with you. I thought things had been going a bit too smoothly, I've actually got a few issues. Also, the bike does too. Issue numero uno. I have no actual way of tensioning the chain or stopping the wheel from being pulled forward under power other than the clamping force of the hub bolts. And spoiler, hub bolts alone isn't enough. Issue numero duo is that the tyre doesn't clear the frame, even with the smaller rim and cut tread. But you know what? That sounds like an issue for future alley. Present alley is going to fit the front wheel instead. This consists of an Onza Pro hub. See, it says it right there. This is a lightweight model with pretty flanges. And who doesn't love pretty flanges? Plus, it has a white paint job to match the theme. So the paint quality isn't great. The rim is a questionably named tri-hole model from the equally questionably named components brand of Cox bikes, Tri-all. Cox, Tri-all, Tri-hole, utter filth. Names aside, this is a 28-hole rim. No, I didn't try them. And is single-walled with extra cutouts for weight saving. Didn't try them either. It's ended up being a nice lightweight wheel and is ideal for the front of this bike. A strawberry racing Ralph will do gripping duties up front. Now, it's not the softest compound ever, but if it stays dry, it'll be more than grippy enough. CT actually found this in my tyre storage. I modified this last year by snipping the corner knobs to make a slightly rounder profile for street carving. It won't harm it for a bit of comp use, so it's all good. One issue with single-walled rims is that it can be really hard to seat the beads properly. I'll try a bit of soapy water in the beads and pump it up hard later and see if that helps. Also, it's possible to get a wonky valve. But hey, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. With the chassis able to roll, let's make it rock by adding a drivetrain. Because it has 26-inch wheels, I'm going to use the lower shell. The BB itself is a because model. I have no idea why Charles brands use such weird names. It's 128mm wide, which is kind of the standard width for trials, and is an ISIS standard, which is a name that didn't age well, and sure to get every retro build channel on the CIA's radar. I'd be surprised if anyone has seen these before. Along with the frame and rear hub, this is another prototype, this time from Tensile. Tensile was Onza's components brand, and these were a potential update to their crank design. I'm not sure why they never saw production. Could be that they were too expensive, badly designed, or maybe Onza just went under before they could start selling them. Either way, they're pretty cool. Rather than using a threaded freewheel, it has a spline design instead. This makes removing them a lot easier if needed. Fortunately, I also have the matching prototype Tensile freewheel. I don't really have much info about these though, and I have no idea how many engagement points they have. The standard Tensile freewheel had 96 points I think, and seemed to be a bit hit or miss with reliability. With no other freewheels able to be used with this crank, I'm crossing my fingers this version holds up. How's this for a bash ring, by the way? This was gifted to me by my pal Johnny Bravo and is laser cut from stainless steel. I've had it a little while, just waiting for the right bike, and I think this Onza is unique enough to warrant it. I just need to make sure I put it the right way round. With the bash and freewheel fitted, it's all held down with a threaded lock ring. How cool is that? With them fitted, I noticed an immediate and quite serious issue. The cranks have a very narrow Q factor, and there's just no room for rim brake calipers. I think I'm lucky they even cleared the frame. Maybe this is why they never saw production. But I'll pass that issue on to future Ali. In the meantime, previous Ali left me, current future present Ali, a KMC K610 chain and a wheel that doesn't really fit. Man, I hate that guy. Especially when the wheel needs to be further forwards for the chain to fit. This is going to be tricky. The tyre's already rubbing the frame in this position, but I can move the wheel forward to fit the chain. Hopefully, there's enough room to pull the wheel back and clear the tyre once fitted. It's hard to say without a proper tensioning system. I guess I'd better solve this issue first. Annoyingly, the tyre's bottomed out on the frame before there's enough slack in the chain to remove it, so I need to deflate the tyre first. I did consider using chain tugs, but I don't know where my wheel will be sitting and whether it would work or not. So instead, I'm going to use snail cams, which means I need to add something for them to push against. First, I drill a wonky hole. Then I tap it to take an M5 bolt. And then with the bolt fitted, the cam now has something to push against. I then repeat the process on the other side. If you haven't seen snail cams before, they're used a lot on motorbikes and older bike trials bikes. When you rotate the cam, the distance between it and the axle increases and pushes the wheel back. Simple and clever. They can be a bit fiddly to use, but are light and cheap to make. They work reasonably well, but can get chewed up over time, making them even more fiddly. But for this bike, they're just about the perfect system. But after this effort, does the tyre even fit? No, it doesn't. And worse than that, the chain is literally rubbing through the frame. That's a pretty serious design flaw. I'd rather not destroy the frame, so I'm going to try the upper BB position and see if the chain and tyre clears then. Tedious, but the moment of truth. The chain is very close, but it's not making constant contact, so that's a win. The tyre is fitting better, but it is still making some contact. Remember when I said I trimmed every second shoulder knob? Well, the taller ones are the ones making contact. If I trim these down, it should fully clear. I could use my proper tool for this, but sod it. The knife is quicker at the cost of a little consistency. After a few minutes of cutting, the second moment of truth. Thank heck for that. This is the issue with building prototype stuff. There's no guarantees things will actually work, or last long if they do. I was worried this whole frame design was going to be a failure, but fortunately, things seem to be functioning now. Now being the key word. Right, past future Ali found that whole process tedious, and now it's time for future present Ali to deal with the brake situation. Because the rim brakes seem to be out of this situation, I'm going to fit discs instead. And I just so happen to have a pair of Lewis LH4 brakes for it. It's like CT knew the cranks weren't going to clear. If you didn't catch my recent sponsor reveal video, Lewis are a new sponsor of mine. Because I rely so much on my brakes, I will only use products I like, and I've honestly been so impressed with Lewis's offerings. They do a few different models, and these LH4s have great power and a super light lever action, which I hope can help combat my arm pump issues I often get at comps. Annoyingly, I didn't fit a rotor, which means I have to go through the whole fiddly process of removing and fitting the wheel again. To save a bit of weight, I'll be using this lightweight 203mm rotor. Interesting. From this angle, the rotor and frame's disc mount are definitely not at the same angle. I've got a feeling this is going to be tedious to get running smoothly. But let's crack on and see. CT knows the score with adapters, the chunkier the better, and this one's a beast. Okay, it's certainly not lined up, but it's not as far out as I thought. I'll add a couple of slim washers between the frame and adapter, and hopefully that'll straighten it enough. It doesn't help that this rotor's a little bent. Not to be homophobic or anything, but I do prefer my rotors straight. But at this point, this is probably as good as I'll get it. It'll annoy me, but it will work. To finish off, I just neaten up the hose routing a little bit. Now it's time for a front brake, which is another Lewis LH4. I'm hoping this will be a bit smoother to fit. The front rotor is the same as the rear, only this time, randomly, in red. The fork has a 160mm post mount, so I'll use a +40 Lewis adapter and a couple of spacers to fit the 203 rotor. This rotor is bent too. Maybe I should just be more tolerant. I'll accept it for now, but I can't promise to bury my bigotry forever. Swiftly moving on, these pedals won't fit themselves. These are Welgo MG1s. The M stands for magnesium. The G also stands for magnesium. But the 1? That's not even on the periodic table, so I have no idea what that's doing there. Despite their chunky size, these were really popular in trials years ago. They're lightweight with decent grip, and if you were posh, you'd get the titanium axle upgrade kit and practically have to tie them down to avoid them being blown away. Nearly done. Just some bar mittens left to go. CT says he found these in a ditch somewhere. They've probably been thrown out by a bike shop when they couldn't sell them. I mean, this is a bit of a weird thing to put on your packaging. But either way, a bit of GT85 works wonders for installing rubber grips. And once fitted, these track grips are nice and thin, which is great for a bit of trials action. Ah, damn my bigoted mind. I just have to have straight rotors on my bikes. I sent CT out on an emergency hunt, and he came back with these rotors. They're a bit heavier, but will be straighter for longer. Plus, the black arms match the theme. I was just going to show you how well the brakes were running, but in the process, I noticed something I missed earlier. The chain isn't clearing the frame like I thought. It's making contact in a different spot. I added a bit of Velcro to quieten down any chain slap on this lower point, so I'll add a bit more to the upper part and try and protect the frame the best I can. It still makes contact, but at least I won't hear it. Out of sight, out of mind and all that. Right, it's finally time to make sure things are straight and tight, and then see see what this crazy bike can do. But first, let's give this thing away. Well, it's no flyweight, but 10.2 kilos is acceptable. The discs are heavier than rim brakes and the rear tyres on the chunky side too, but I'd take a bike that rides well rather than sacrificing ride quality for weight savings. But it's all well and good saying that. What if it doesn't ride well at all? Well, with the BB in a high position, it works out to roughly as a plus 55 BB. That's actually way higher than I like. Combined with the relatively low bars, this bike does not like to manual. And that was true for going backwards too. But when just hopping about, the rear wheel control was actually pretty decent. Even the brakes that aren't bedded in yet were holding up nicely. But I was disappointed again when I tried front hops. I find higher BB frames and lower front ends not particularly nice for them. It did pass the 360 pivot test though. The wheelbase is around 1055. Combined with the higher bottom bracket, that's surprisingly modern. It doesn't mean that I'm a fan though. I do struggle with muscle memory and often think my back wheel is 30mm higher than it really is, which catches me out. I never truly know if my back wheel is exactly on a corner or a few mil below it. Even though I've got nice quiet brakes and put Velcro to further quieten things, the chain still contacts the frame somewhere, so I need to sort that out. Looks wise, I'm not sure if I like it or not. What do you think? One thing I do think is that I can't end this video without trying smaller wheels. Come on, I had to, didn't I? By the way, even though we say 20-inch trials bikes use 20-inch wheels, that's not entirely accurate. The rear wheel is actually 19-inch and is influenced by moto trials. This allows a bigger 2.5-inch tyre at the same circumference as a 20-inch wheel and 2-inch tyre. This is actually a pretty old school tyre with a classic trials pattern. It reminds me of my youth. Also, because the wheels are smaller with less leverage, smaller 160mm rotors can be used. And instead of a 15-tooth sprocket, the smaller wheels use a smaller 12-tooth instead. The front wheel is 20-inch, and this gives more tyre options, with CT picking up a cool Schwalbe Little Joe model. It's not as soft compound as comp tyres, but possibly a great street option for the rare 20-inch street trials riders out there. Right, let's swap and see what it's like. Oh man, that looks so weird. Absolutely not an improvement looks-wise. It looks like it's been squashed. But is it an improvement ride-wise? Let's find out. Well, no real improvement in manuals. And back wheel control is about the same. No real surprise though, as the geometry hasn't really changed. Only slightly shorter chainstays, as I could run the chain one link shorter. .360 front pivots also feel about the same. Now weirdly, even though the BB height relative to the axles hasn't changed, the lower height of the wheels themselves make the BB lower and, in turn, makes the bike feel less top heavy. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't really like 20-inch trials bikes, but I do feel the rear wheel is closer to where my muscle memory thinks there should be a wheel, and I hope that makes sense. Basically, it means that for some reason, these 20-inch wheels feel a bit more normal to me. It doesn't mean that I like it though. So, what do you think? Which do you prefer, 20-inch or 26-inch? Unfortunately, swapping between them is a bit of a faff. I need a shorter chain and different rear disc adapter, and if I get the lower BB position working, I'd need to swap the BB every time and ideally put on a taller stem too. I've never really enjoyed riding 20-inch bikes, especially on natural where I find the small wheels get caught up on bumps and roots way easier. What I'm getting at is, don't expect me to ride it in this mode anytime soon. But that said, it was cool to at least try them and make use of the frame's unique selling point. As usual, I'm interested in CT's opinion of the final build. Okay, I'm a man of my word. I'll be sticking to what I know for the comp, so 26-inch wheels are the way. I'd like to get it working in the lower BB position too. Maybe I can just protect the frame from the chain and it'll be okay. You'll find out if you watch my upcoming comp video, I guess. It'll have longer chain stays, but I think I'll cope better with that than I would the higher bottom bracket. Even though the frame shape isn't totally my taste, I do like the black and white theme. The custom bash and rear cranks and rear hub are definite highlights too. And even though it's early days, the freewheel hasn't done anything it shouldn't yet. Likewise, the headset, even though it's not flush, feels solid. Hopefully it stays that way. I'll probably get some complaints about the excess hose, but I might swap these brakes onto another bike at some point, and I want to keep my options open. Speaking of the brakes, these are far from bedded in, but already feel nice. I'm really surprised with how light the lever action is too. And despite the issues with alignment, I'm happy I got them to run rub-free. If you want to get a discount on Lewis brakes, you can use my code ALI10 at Submission Cycles. They can help with worldwide shipping, message them, and I get a slight financial kickback, so it's also supporting me and my channel. Links in my description. Now before I go, what does CT think of the bigger wheels? Right, well, no pressure then. I'll film how the comp goes and I'll see if I can keep CT happy. Until then, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye bye.